Bases dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here. It's a Thursday. We're taking your Thursday thoughts on a number of things. PSG at home yesterday, losing to Manchester City, and maybe need some practice on setting a wall on free kicks, and also not committing horrendous red card fouls late in games. That was oof. Talk about that. We'll talk about VAR in Columbus. Our friend Chris Penso got into it with Caleb Porter. Caleb had a few things to say about the 2-2 draw that Columbus had a 2-1 lead late. They threw that part away, but there were also 2 goals pulled off the board that, and people were worried.
The appropriate sound effect.
Yeah, people were worried about Chris Penso, like, oh, he's gonna help Columbus because he's a U.S. guy and he's from Ohio. Well, Caleb Porter would like to object to that theory. Portland with a late goal against Club America. We've got USL Championship at the top of hour number 2 to dig into what happened in Louisville. Why did John Hackworth leave? We're going to try to find out what we can on that. We'll look at the weekend in the second division as well. And we've got Niko More coming up in hour number 2 to look at MLS week number 3. It is a very, very busy day. And for some reason on Twitch, there's an audio issue that makes no sense. We will try to figure that out really quickly because that is very strange. John, why don't you tell us about our guest real quick at the top of the hour while I work on this?
Yes, so I'll give the USL Championship filibuster here. Jeff Greer, the play-by-play voice for Lou City from ESPN Louisville, is going to join us at 10 a.m., and he can give us a peek back at, he can do many things here with us. Obviously, the big story is John Hackworth leaving after one game and what happened there, and also Atlanta United 2 had their season opener with Lou City up there at Lynn Family in front of a rather large crowd. So we'll get the lay of the land for the match that happened last weekend and what in the wide world of sports happened with Hackworth leaving Lou City. So, yeah, Jeff Greer will be joining us at the top of hour number 2 to break things down. He's our guest from Everything USL Championship this week. Schedule's out, and then you've got more teams playing, so things are starting to roll along a little bit there as well. So we'll take a peek at power rankings, schedule, and Lou City at 10 a.m.
And we've got Jarrett Smith. And Jarrett, why don't we jump into the Columbus and Monterrey game from last night? I want to give you what Caleb Porter had to say after the match because he didn't really hold anything back. Caleb's not really known for being diplomatic in these situations. First, he stormed out of the press conference after his comments, and he said, "We get screwed on 2 calls, a penalty clear, and an offsides that's not offsides, that we score a fair goal, and it's by an American. What would happen in Mexico if you had a Mexican in the VAR booth? I think we all know it's ridiculous." He's talking about Chris Penso being the VAR, which was added on Tuesday. To the competition, and Chris Penso was the VAR in this situation, and he was involved in a no call on the Crew's appeal for a penalty in the first half, a go-ahead Crew goal overturned in the second half for offside that did not look like it was offside. And Caleb's not happy with Chris Penso.
I feel like it's a thing that happens more often than not, though. And looping it back to whether or not he's American, whether or not there would be a Mexican official running VAR in Mexico, does a disservice to the fact that Chris Penso can be hit or miss as hell.
He was really good on VAR in the Orlando-Kansas City game from Friday. He was great on VAR in that game.
He was. That was a great testament to what VAR can be. And then he was just as questionable in the other direction last night. To my point, Chris Penso can be really hit or miss. And that's not really what I want all the time in my official, especially one that might be really hit or miss and have a really short fuse with guys. And Chris Penso has a couple qualities that are not my favorite. But, yeah, when he's on, it's great. When he's not on, it ain't great for anybody, really. So, yeah, I mean, you can go back and forth about, nationality of VAR. I mean, is he asking that we always put an American VAR in the booth and make sure that calls go his way all the time? I mean, it sucks, man. I hate it for Columbus because I think they got it wrong. Columbus also still had a 2-1 lead and threw it away late. Chris Penso didn't make you throw away a late lead.
Mm-mm.
Lucas Celerayana is going to burn this continent to the ground, by the way. I'm really excited for it.
He's not going to burn it to the ground in the next game because he is out on yellow card
not.
accumulation.
No, he is not. But he's going to do it just in general. And I'm here for it. It's a joy watching him. Chris Penso didn't make you throw away a 1-goal lead late in the game. So, I mean, I get it. You lost potentially 2 goals. At least 1 goal, definitely, in this. And that does suck. And VAR is imperfect. It can be done really well. And Chris Penso was a part of both the last example of it working beautifully and now the most recent example of we might need to discuss with officials about how they go about overturns and what, clear and obvious means sometimes.
Yeah, well, in CONCACAF, too, you really have some work to do here. You throw this in on Tuesday. It was supposed to be in for the semifinals. It's in early. You only have U.S. and Mexican referees and Canadian who work with VAR. You don't have VAR in other leagues. Like, if you've noticed, the AVAR are other referees from the federation who are, I guess, getting kind of a sense of what VAR is like. So
that's a really good idea, too.
That part's a good idea.
Put them in a position that's not really super high leverage. Let them see how it should be used. I love that idea. I didn't know they were doing that. I'm a fan of this.
Yeah, I know O'Shea Nation, who's done a lot of games in CONCACAF, was an AVAR for one of the games, for example. So that's already setting up a difficult situation. And the VAR is in a no-win situation here. Chris Penso, yes, he is from the United States. Yes, he works in MLS. If he gave anything that looked like it favored Columbus, the Mexican media would go nuts. I don't like Caleb's argument about it's an American in the booth. That has nothing to do with the part about Mexico and a Mexican in the VAR booth. It was going to be one or the other. Like, if it was a Canadian, it would have been somebody who works in MLS. Like, in any which way, it wasn't going to be the ideal situation. It puts the referee in a tough spot, too. And you see this all the time where it's like, okay, well, if we put this guy on, then one team's going to get favoritism. But then it's almost like the referee is so worried about showing favoritism that they go harder on the other team. And it kind of defeats the purpose. I think Penso just blew 2 calls. I think he blew 2 calls. I don't think the offside one, in the CONCACAF definitions of the way it's ruled, you're not dealing with lines, you're not dealing with Hawkeye systems. It has to be clear and obvious. It was in no way clear or obvious. I don't even think it was right when they overturned it. That's wrong. It's just wrong use of the system. It's wrong use of the VAR individual. I think the VAR here, no matter who he is and where he's from, he blew 2 calls that hurt Columbus. Saying we got screwed on 2 calls and explaining the 2 that you feel like you got screwed on, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. The part about the rest of it is putting pressure on referees going forward that I do not care for at all. I don't like that part. CONCACAF should have waited on this. They'd already had it set to start in the semis. They didn't need to rush it in and do it kind of halfway here because it really creates a difficult situation. I don't have it in front of me, and I don't know if you guys remember. Thomas Jawin asks, who was the VAR for Atlanta and Philadelphia? I think it was an all-pro crew. Jair Marufo obviously was the referee, but I think the VAR was as well.
I think it was Chapman.
Might be right. That sounds right. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I thought the whole group, with the exception of the AVAR, who I think was another referee from CONCACAF, I think it was an all-pro group. Drew Fisher. There you go, Chris Ashley. Thank you. Drew Fisher, who's one of the top referees in the league. I don't know how you solve it until you get more VAR going or more referees trained on using VAR, but Penso just got it wrong in this, and it hurt Columbus. But as Jared said, he didn't do anything about the defending on the final goal for Monterrey. That's just on Columbus.
Oof.
And both are true. I don't think you throw away Porter's complaints about VAR because of bad defending, but you have to factor in the bad defending. And it was a crazy match because it felt like Columbus was going to take the lead. They did take the lead. Then it's called back. Then they take the lead again really late on the goal from Zelarayan, which was brilliant. Then you give up the really late equalizer pretty quickly soon after. And that's a problem for the Crew, and they're going to have it really tough going into leg 2 without Lucas Zelarayan.
Yeah, I mean, you look at how back and forth it was, meaning the match in general, and then when you've got a situation as late as it was, and you've got somebody at the back post, and there's space, and I mean there's space, where you can jump up, get your head on the ball, put it in, you're tied at 2, and what could have been is not anymore. But to the point that you guys have been making this morning, first and foremost, Jason, I think you're right. When you rush something, there's always that factor that when something is rushed, whatever it is we're talking about, just when you rush in general, there's always that thought that something won't be correct when you rush it. And when you're trying to rush to get something done, it may not be implemented at 100% for whatever aspect of life we're talking about here. But it should have been kept for the semis because that was the plan altogether. Just keep it for the semifinals and don't rush it. Get it right. Get it in place to where it'll be as close to how you need it to be as possible. Yes, the calls were blown. Yes, everything was rushed. But in the end, for Columbus, you can't leave a guy that open this late in a match. And so that to me, at the end of all of this, that to me is what's going to stick as you're heading to leg number 2. And I think that also the point that you make is absolutely correct. When you say what Caleb Porter says about your VAR, and I mean, honestly, it could go really, and as you were breaking it down, for me, it could go one of two ways. Either you're going to be looser in your implementations because of the nationality, or you're going to be tighter. It could go one of two ways, at least for me.
Well, no. There's a third way where you just call the game like the game's supposed to be called, and that's what 95% of the referees are going to do. Let's not act like it's only two ways there, okay?
All right, so the third way is absolutely correct.
Yeah, the third way is the most common way. I mean, referees, I don't think Chris Penso came into this thinking about the other two ways. I don't think anybody does if you're a referee at this level, because you're going to be judged on it. You are trying to call it, but that stuff's in the back of your mind. Mm-hmm. That stuff's in the back of your mind. Pacine, I think the part that's been rushed is putting these situations for me. I would not have wanted to do this until I had other VARs trained from other countries. So I'm not putting a Mexican VAR on a Mexican game or an American VAR on an American game against a Mexican team. I would have avoided that. I wouldn't have implemented it until I had that part in, because it just creates an unnecessary distraction either way. Right. Yes, they know the system, and Penso blew it in this case, but he shouldn't be in that situation to where Porter says what he says afterwards. Or the flip side, if he gives a goal that we feel like, well, that shouldn't have been a goal, then the Mexican media would go the other way.
Hey, the American VAR.
They would. Goal. I mean, but that's the game, because it opens up that door. It opens up that door to complain, and it's a problem. You need the other referees from other countries so you don't have that issue come up. That's all.
I'm sure Caleb Porter will have very calm and nice demeanors next time he sees Penso on the touchline.
Totally.
Because Caleb Porter is known for keeping things very even keel and not speaking his mind. I'm sure this will go great for everyone.
Was that sarcasm font, Jared?
In Comic Sans, yes.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah, it was very much sarcasm font. This is the same Caleb Porter who was doing everything but a DX chop at Bruce Arena at one point.
Yes, yes. He's also nearly gotten into it with Oscar Pareja, Pep Guardiola.
Which is not something Oscar Pareja is is sneaky high on my list of coaches who I'm not fighting in this league.
No, he should be
Just
very
because,
high on that list.
yeah, I mean, well, I think he should be as well, but I think he's a name that slips out of people's minds when you think about what coach do I not want to fight. Oscar
Yes.
Pareja should be higher than you're considering him, or ever you're considering him. For me, a lot of it goes back to this is a conversation that gets a little nuanced to, I think, to some people, but it's the difference between complaining about VAR and complaining about the person who applied VAR. VAR is fine. You used VAR in the right situations. If you don't think it should have been used in this game and you should have waited till the next game, I can understand that. Don't be mad at VAR in and of itself. Be mad at the person who applied it incorrectly. In that case, this is Chris Penso, and he should be under criticism for the way he did things. VAR itself wasn't the problem and isn't the problem. Miss me England, like by 10 miles, difference distance between one stadium to another when y'all complain about traveling to road games. Miss me with the idea that it's VAR in general. It's a lot of times the application of VAR by the person who's responsible for that comes down to education and applying things correctly. And Chris Penso got it wrong to the other end of the spectrum, that I thought he played a perfect game last Friday night in Orlando, or in Kansas City against Orlando.
Yeah, and I don't think Porter's saying anything about VAR as a whole. I mean, he's definitely going at Penso. He's going at him pretty good. And he should. And look, also there is a little bit of a performance art to it as well. Caleb Porter's not going to be in a better position to win the second leg by blasting his back line publicly for allowing that second goal. He's not going to benefit from doing that in the media availability. What can he do? He can rally his troops by putting it on the VAR. That's what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing there. Caleb Porter's a smart guy. I don't love his tactics all the time. I wish he had kind of stuck to his guns early on, where it was a 4-3-3. It was a lot of fun to watch. He went to Portland from Akron after lighting it up in the college game. Once he had a little bit of adversity, he started to drop deeper and deeper and become more of a countering team. I'd love to have seen him stuck with it. But he didn't. That's okay. He's a feisty guy. I kind of like that part. He's entertaining. He's fun. I mean, he seems like he wants to fight everybody every other week. Okay, cool. We get some drama. But ultimately, this is a really top team in this league, and they could not win at home in CONCACAF Champions League. Mentality. Talked about it for a long time around here. Mentality in these games. I think the skill level, the talent level, is not as big of an issue anymore. The mentality still is. And we see this happen far too often. Portland showed a nice mentality to come back and get a late goal on a penalty, but they still were only able to manage a draw. And one of the weirder stats, I'd never known this, Mike Donovan tweeted it. Club America has never beaten an MLS club on U.S. soil in a competitive match. 5 losses, 3 draws. But they usually overturn things in the home leg at the Estadio Azteca. Yeah. Yes. But they have never beaten an MLS club in a competitive match on U.S. soil. They didn't again. Felipe Mora, I think the penalty happened in like the 93rd or 94th minute. The actual goal happened in the 97th, and Portland gets that 1-1 draw. Is that going to be enough going to the Azteca? Probably not. Is Columbus going to be able to overturn things against Monterrey in Monterrey? Probably not without Lucas Zelarayan.
Yeah.
That's not good. That is not good enough. And that's something that this league and these teams have to find a way to improve the mentality in these games. Some of it is where it falls in the schedule, 100%. But there's also a mentality aspect to it. And look, we saw the mentality issues for Atlanta United against Philadelphia. And talked about it a lot since that match. When they fell behind, it kind of fell apart mentally for them. These are things that young players have to improve upon. These are things that I do think American players across the board need to improve upon so they can handle these moments. Because it feels like the players from the Mexican clubs can handle these moments. And Philadelphia handled the moment really, really well against Atlanta on Tuesday. That'll serve Philadelphia well if they face Club America in the next round, which you think right now, after leg ones, is going to be the matchup in the semifinal.
Yeah,
it feels really easy to look at it and get a. It's really easy to look at this right now and think we can predict the semifinals.
Yeah,
just because of the way this played out, which doesn't mean we won't have fireworks in the next round. No, or the next leg. No. You should still watch the next legs.
Absolutely,
weird stuff can happen.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's when you can kind of project what you're thinking is going to happen in that final four with the second legs, but just because you can project it out doesn't mean. I mean, look, Club America is going to be without one of their major offensive stars as well in the second leg. So, is it going to be a test for Caleb Porter and crew heading to the Estadio Azteca? Absolutely, but it should be an interesting watch to see. With the mentality issue that you're talking about, how do they handle it in that second leg? Same for Portland going up against Monterrey. How do you handle it in these situations? This is on the job training for Portland, for Atlanta, for Columbus, for all of these teams, and for MLS when it comes to being in a competition like CONCACAF. These second legs, this is definitely on the job training that you can apply forward.
Yeah, for sure. Other bits of news, because we've got some questions on Twitter, some questions on the Twitch pitch that we're going to get to before 10 o'clock, because hour number 2, USL Championship in the first half. We'll learn more about the Louisville City situation, and then Niko Moreno, our friend from Pulso Sports, will be joining us at 10:30 to talk MLS Week 2, Week 3. We'll talk some CCL as well. So other things on the board today. Manchester City with a huge win yesterday in Paris. They, I think, showed some grit. They showed the ability to come back in this one. And I thought Pep Guardiola had an interesting comment afterwards. He said they could face elimination if they are shy in the second leg. Felt like in the first half they were too shy. And Guardiola said it's halfway for the job, and it's simple. If we play shy and not who we are, PSG have the quality to win 2-0. Kevin De Bruyne talked about how they adjusted their pressure a little bit late in the first half and started to bottle PSG up a little bit. The goals were a little weird. It's a cross shot from Kevin De Bruyne that finds the back of the net. It was interesting in the post game on CBS Sports with Peter Schmeichel, Jamie Carragher, Micah Richards, all talking about it and disagreeing on who's to blame. I think it goes to show you that at times there's not, this is it, this is the one way, and this is how the game is. No, everybody has different opinions. A lot of people are blaming Keylor Navas on that one. Peter Schmeichel said it's the defenders in front. Navas has to hold his line because he doesn't know where a deflection could come. I thought he did react a little bit late even with that. We'll see. Navas, some people were blaming for the second goal. I'm blaming the wall completely because it gets through the wall. It's horrendous in the wall. What is this about, like walls on free kicks we're seeing lately where there's so many issues with it? It's not difficult. It's literally standing there and protecting your sensitive areas. That's it.
Stand next to the guy next to you, unless you're the guy who's laying down behind all the guys.
Don't have anybody laying down behind because that's dumb too.
So then take that guy, put him in the wall, stand literally next to the guy next to you. And if there's 5 or 6 of you, make sure that there are guys next to you, unless you're the guy at the end, and protect the middle, protect the Manly region. That's it. You have 2 things to do when you're standing in a wall. Stand next to the guy next to you, make sure there's no room, and protect yourself. Protect yourself. Those are your 2 jobs.
Since we've given up all pretense of being cool and hip, as some say, don't do the Michael Stipe dance from the Stand video either, where you jump and you spin. Don't do that nonsense. Just stand there.
No.
Just stand there.
Stand in the place where you work.
If you,
okay. Well,
yeah, I know, Jared, I know. If you're gonna be in the wall, you got to just stand there. You have to do it. Katie, I am 100% anti man lying down behind the wall. I am so against that. Because what I would do is go back. I wish I could remember the game they played. It's my favorite free kick routine. Sweden did it in the 94 World Cup. And I think it was Thomas Brolin who scored the goal. because he starts on one side of the wall, and he wasn't like connected to the wall, which you can't do anymore. But he was on one side of the wall. I think it was a free kick from the right half of the field. And he ran behind the wall, and it was a pass slipped in to him, and then he goes in to score. I would 100% do that every time. If somebody's laying down behind the wall, I would exploit the fact that they're having a defender lie down and have a run off of it and try to create something. I think Nick Raimondo nailed it, and I agree with him on this. He said he wanted his wall to jump, not as high as they possibly could, but jump with their toes down to where they could graze any low shot, but give you just a little more height if you feel like you have to jump. So the wall making on free kicks has fallen apart in 2021. It's ridiculous. So that's something that PSG is going to have a problem with. Sergio Ramos could be back for leg 2 against Chelsea for Real Madrid. He also could be back at Real Madrid in general now. Per ABC in Spain, he's decided he wants to stay, but he wants 2 years, which was always the hang-up. He will take the 10% reduction of the salary if he gets the 2 years. Contract ends in June. He wants a deal through 23. That's changed a bit over time. Real Madrid's also dealing with another injury because it just keeps happening. Dani Carvajal is out for the rest of the season, muscle injury in the first leg against Chelsea. He will have missed 36 of 52 games if Real Madrid, that's it right now, 53 if they get to the Champions League final. 5 different injuries. They are expected potentially to have Federico Valverde back and Ferland Mendy maybe somewhat back, maybe not starting back. Ramos, originally it was he won't be available to start against Chelsea, but I think they're trying to ramp that up, and you could see some of these guys get minutes against Osasuna to build up. So that leg 2 for Madrid and Chelsea keeps adding a little extra spice to it. The big news on the U.S. coaching front is Jesse Marsch is the new manager at RB Leipzig, replacing Julian Nagelsmann. 2-year deal. He was the assistant at Leipzig in 2018-19. Oliver Mintzlaff, the chief executive at Leipzig, said Jesse knows the club, the city of Leipzig, and above all, the club and playing philosophy. He is probably going to do the double again in the Austrian Bundesliga with Red Bull Salzburg. Mintzlaff said that Jesse's been part of the Red Bull football group for over 6 years now and has done incredible work in all his roles so far, constantly developing step by step. Now, according to AS and others, maybe the interesting element here is that Jesse Marsch turned down an offer from Tottenham and from Eintracht Frankfurt to take the job with RB Leipzig. The turning down of a contract with Tottenham is the one that's like,
Mm-hmm.
I think he made the right decision.
Yes.
But,
Turning down Spurs. Yes.
If you are Tottenham, that might be a little bit of a kick to the gut. I would think.
I absolutely. I think that, if you're looking for guys and Jesse Marsch tells you, nah fam, or thanks but no thanks, but, I got something else on my mind and my plate and I'm going to go over here. I think it's a wake-up call for Spurs about where folks might think Spurs are right now when it comes to jobs in the European theater in general. I mean, that's him turning down Spurs. It's to me.
DW pointed out that Marsch has generally liked the 4-2-2-2 formation, which is something that Hasenhüttl and Rangnick like to play as well. Nagelsmann went to a 3-4-3 because he wanted to play to the strengths of his wingbacks, Angelino and Mukiele. Marsch has used back threes a little bit. I don't really remember it with New York very much. He went a lot of times 4-2-3-1, I think mainly because of Bradley Wright Phillips, who was best by himself up top. Every time he tried to go 4-2-2-2, it didn't really work for the New York version of the Red Bulls. So he kind of shifted that. I will be curious to see how he tweaks things based off what he has to work with at Leipzig. Some other bits and bobs. Juventus La Stampa reported that Andrea Pirlo will lose his job if Juventus does not beat Udinese this weekend. Sport Media Set claims that Juventus have decided to reappoint Max Allegri, even if Pirlo gets them into the Champions League next year. They've decided to move on. The drama in Italy will continue. There's also reports that UEFA is investigating Zlatan Ibrahimovic for that alleged financial interest in a betting company that we talked about last week. Interesting. That's kind of a bad look for
the Brazilians
old
think
Zlatan.
Juventus are being a little bit reckless and fast with their managerial
The
switches.
Brazilians are wondering why Pirlo wasn't fired like 5 games in.
Yeah.
In Spain, Barcelona gets a little bit of a reprieve, according to Bloomberg. Some of the note holders, I think it's about 200 million euro of notes that were about to come due. They've agreed to some relief for Barcelona to give them a little more space. Right now, it says a 488 million euro net debt pile, and they ran up 100 million euros of losses last year due to the pandemic. They get a little bit of help. We'll see how much more they get because they're probably going to need a little bit more than that. Interesting one in England before we get into questions. The Premier League has held talks with broadcasters about not putting their next rights deal up for auction. That's going to need governmental approval over anti-competition laws. But they're trying to roll over what the current deal is. That deal in 2018 had a 10% drop in value. Clubs are worried that if it goes to an open auction, it'll be a bigger drop for the next 3-year cycle.
Yeah.
People think that the value of TV rights in Europe has peaked. And this was one thing that Florentino Perez and his fever dreams of commentary on very interesting sports talk shows in Spain, one thing that he stressed a bunch of times was that there's not more money coming from TV rights. It's going to be less. Talks so far have been held with the existing live rights holder, Sky, BT, and Amazon, about extending their current deals on similar terms. Nobody's commenting, but it will need approval from the government in the UK for them to be able to just to roll it over. Rival broadcasters, I would assume, would object to that.
Mm-hmm.
So this is this is one to keep an eye on because that TV money is critical in England. To England being the giant league that it is, that money starts to come back to the pack a little bit. And the fact that they don't want to open it to bid, I don't think they're hearing what they want to hear in terms of more money coming in. I think it's the opposite. France has got all kinds of problems because now they're having more problems on the broadcast side. One, Bordeaux is in administration, which that's a huge issue. Le Havre in the second division is up for sale for 15 million euro. We can start a GoFundMe. We can do that. Get Bob Bradley back to Le Havre. We can pull this off. This is the line that jumps out to you from the L'Equipe report. The owner, who's an American, Vincent Volpe. Volpe's in talks with at least 2 potential buyers. He's not in a hurry to sell. Says this is the latest reminder of the sheer number of clubs available to buy in France's top 2 flights at present. Well, one reason why is Canal Plus, their TV partner, is already looking to change things up. They don't want the whole package. They never wanted the whole package. They only want to show 2 games every weekend instead of 10. They picked up the rest for nothing, basically. Nothing. It's a good bit of chunk of money, but it's not at all what was paid for by MediaPro and by the channel that they were creating for this Telefoot. 850 million euro is what that was. They're not paying. They're paying 330 million right now. So they don't want more of these games. They don't want to do this again. So the French Federation, the French League, they have to find somebody to show 80% of the matches. beIN Sport doesn't want to do it. They're dragging their feet. DAZN is in the mix. But everybody else is like, well, we want to do a deal with Canal Plus to distribute the channel because of just the way the French situation works in terms of cable and all that. So it's a mess. Canal Plus doesn't really want DAZN to get into the market, so they're probably not going to do a deal with them. DAZN's not going to buy the rights if they don't have wide-ranging, coverage options. So France is back into chaos with it. Good times in Europe right now. The Super League would not have fixed all these, but
Super League.
again, people need to get their heads out of the sand and realize that now's the time to try to fix some of this, and now's the time to work together and try to solve some of these issues. We'll see if they can.
I feel like Germany's sticking their head out of their apartment going, what's all this noise?
Well, Bayern is sticking their head out of their apartment and saying, what's all this noise? We're good. There's a few others who are maybe not so good. But yeah, I mean, they've kind of managed things pretty well. France hasn't. England is looking like there could be some more issues, bigger issues, kind of a slower burn there. Spain's got issues. Italy's got issues on the TV side. Italy's about to have probably civil war behind the scenes because they feel like Agnelli and Juve blocked selling a portion of the broadcast rights because he was looking at Super League the whole time. So he blocked that deal that was being negotiated for a long time for a cash infusion. It didn't happen. So all the mess in Europe. All right, questions from the Twitch pitch, questions from Twitter. I have one to start us off from Colleen Cook. She said, so what's the solution for Atlanta United's attack after last night's match? Practice? Do you need a player? Time? What solves the goals issue? I don't know exactly what solves it. And Jared, I want to get your opinion next. Like, I do think time is an element of it because you want to continue to create better and better chances. But you're creating good chances right now. I think some of it is just converting. And yes, you have to give Andre Blake a ton of credit, but you still have to beat the goalkeeper here at some point. You're getting the opportunities to do it. It has to happen. I think we've seen some of the progression that I looked for after the Alajuelense series, where you're getting more numbers into the attack. You're getting more going forward. I liked Heineman's involvement here lately, where he's getting opportunities. Barco's getting more opportunities. I want more of that specifically. And the wingers have to continue to win their battles. And if they don't, then you've got to find other ways to get into that final third. I think they've done it enough. The chances they're creating are at a good number, and they're pretty good quality with an XG over 2 against Philly. You got to convert. Jarrett, what about you? What do you think?
It takes time. It takes guys sharpening up. It's not the first time that Atlanta has kind of taken a little time early in the season to kind of warm the motor up in terms of finishing. So, I mean, you still want Joseph to get healthy, and I don't want to hear about like being worried about Joseph at this point because it has been a couple of games. He has not been able to give you 90 minutes, and he's still coming off an ACL, which is, okay, I mean, however you want to think about players, there's a mental aspect that comes back from getting back from an injury like that you just kind of got to get used to. And then you just got to have guys actually finish. You're going to have Jurgen Damm's going to have opportunities. He's got to finish. Emerson Heineman's going to have opportunities. He has to finish. Jake Mulroney's going to have opportunities. He has to finish. And that might be something you work on in training of, hey, whereas we're going to work on some one-on-one drills. We're going to put Goose or Alec Can, whoever it may be, in the net, and we're going to work on not shooting it right at people, because this has been a trait that I have seen a lot.
Alex, stand right there. Don't move in this drill.
Let's let Alec get his shoulder right first. I don't know if he's ready for this just yet.
Fine. He can get his shoulder right first.
Yeah, come on now.
Okay, Ben Lundgaard, get in there. Stand still. Don't move.
Rocco, stand right there.
Yeah, no, that's more of it. Vicente, Rocco, hey, next academy goalkeeper, come on in and hang out. This is something we're going to need to get into.
Just get a cardboard cut out of Rocco and put it right there. Hey, shoot around this, please.
It's just repetition. I mean, it's not like I'll go back and dig into the chances from Tuesday a little bit. I mean, I didn't feel like it was right at Blake on a lot of those. I feel like Blake had to make some big saves. So that's okay. Like, I mean, that's going to happen. You're going to have a game like that where a goalkeeper makes 5 first half saves against you and you have to keep going. You just have to keep going and trust in what you have to work with. I think big picture to Colleen's question is just continuing to get those good chances from the interplay, from the numbers in the final third, and continuing to get those numbers into the final third and getting more as you go. Get it to where Lennon and Bello, when you're playing four in the back, feel comfortable jumping into the final third and jumping into goal-scoring opportunities, knowing they've got cover behind them. Heineman and Barco functioning like in intral or central forwards, going back to Steve Bruce's old school ideas, inside forwards. You want them to function that way when it's on. They've got to know when it's on and when they can do that, trusting that they've got cover behind them. The rotations, and I know a lot of people are talking about Carlin Carpenter's video that gets into some of the rotations, gets into some of the organization, which is a great breakdown from a coaching perspective. The rotations are going to be key here because you're building layers upon layers. When we have talked about this in other seasons, it's like you're adding new elements to the attacking part of the team. It's coming pretty quick. I feel like at times it's taken longer than this. You're getting the chances now, which is good. I think in 2019 it took longer to create those chances for a while. You're getting them now. But now it's, okay, what's the next layer alternative? Is that more of the underlap from the outside backs when you have four in the back? Is it, in the case of the formation and the way that you played, the structure you played with against Philly, is it more of the run from Sosa that we saw that created the shot from him off the crossbar? Stuff like that. You've got to get more forward in unexpected ways to catch the defense by surprise. And then those chances and the quality of it goes up. So it just takes time. I think more importantly, it takes time more than anything, but you've moved along faster than I thought you would. I thought it'd take a little bit longer to create the chances that you're creating.
I mean, for me, it's like you're looking at reps, and you're looking at a team that's only played 5 games that involve points, advancements, tournaments, and that kind of stuff. And I just think that with time, you get this stuff. But with you, if you take that first 45 minutes that we saw against Philadelphia and 5 saves, notwithstanding, from Andre Blake, chances were there. Creation was there. Energy was there. Everything was there except putting the ball in the back of the net. And so for me, it comes down to converting the chances when you have them in front of you. But at the same time, it's about the reps and the time and getting used to the relationships and the next step in the after effect of an action and the equal and opposite reaction. So yes, I just talked Newtonian physics when it comes to what we're looking at with Atlanta United. For me, it's time and reps. And like you, I think that things are happening faster than I thought they would.
Percy thinks a cardboard cutout of Rocco Rios Nova would still get a clean sheet.
As long as it's at practice, if it's against Atlanta United players.
I mean, it might.
I don't want to see.
It wouldn't.
Yeah, I hope that Rocco is able with Lundgaard looking like he's going to be all right now. I'd love to see Rocco with the twos this weekend in Oklahoma City. He needs just to keep getting games and keep showing what he can do. Vicente Reyes as well. You've got to get him games too, and I think you'll see Rocco with somewhere in like the 20 to 22, 23 range of games with the twos. Reyes with a few, and you might get Alec Can getting 1 or 2 here when he gets back and is able to play, and maybe Lundgaard a game or 2 to keep him sharp. But you're going to see that rotation. I want to see Rocco get games because you got a decision to make. You got a decision at the end of the year if the reports are accurate on that purchase option, and so far so good. But you want to see him in a consistent run of games to make that decision. I agree, Coco. You'd like to have an ATL UTD3
yes.
to be able to get all these guys minutes and figure that out. That's a whole next
USL
level.
League 2 franchise up and running.
Well, yeah. I mean, then academy guys could play in that. We'll see. We'll see what happens with MLS Next and all these different things. Like player development is taking on so many different runs right now, and it's good to see, but it's a critical part going forward. You've got goalkeeping talent. But you got to make some decisions with Rocco and Vicente and others. So, okay. Questions on Twitter. What do we have? Give us one, John.
We got 2 about stadium capacity and one about CONCACAF Champions League. So we'll go CONCACAF Champions League from Dan, 2 stars.
Okay.
He says, CCL refereeing sucks. Could be many factors why, but it still sucks.
Well, and Dan is a Columbus fan, I saw, and this is a weird one because this was a pro VAR involved in this. Who was the center on the Columbus match, by the way? It was not a pro crew. It was, I want to say, a Costa Rican crew.
Yeah, I mean, I'll dig that up real quick.
I know there were a couple of Costa Rican crews in the CONCACAF Champions League games this week. I believe the other one was Honduran, but I could be wrong. Yeah, it's not great because you've got some wide varieties in the leagues, and these games are really difficult when you get into this, where it's a U.S. team and a Mexican team, or a Canadian team and a Mexican team, and you're reluctant to put a U.S. or a Canadian referee because they work in MLS with that team on those games, except in Chris Penso's case where you put him on VAR because he didn't have any other options. And then you're going to referees who work in lower quality leagues. It's not being dismissive to the levels of Costa Rica or Honduras or other leagues. It's just they're not at the same level. The game is not played at the same pace. The referees aren't at the same quality either. So CONCACAF really needs to find ways to bridge that gap. I think it's creating exchange programs with Liga MX, with MLS, to bring those referees in to work, which will elevate them. It'll help CONCACAF Champions League. It will help Nations League. It will help World Cup qualifying. It'll help all of that.
Juan Calderon from Costa Rica was your center ref in Columbus. William Arrieta, Gerson Lopez, and Brian Lopez was your fourth last night.
Yeah, you gotta find ways to up the level across the board, and it's tough when they're working in leagues that are played differently than MLS and Liga MX. It's tough for those referees to get consistently tested and developed in those moments. Let's get into the stadium question, because I know that's one a lot of people have had.
Right. Nathan Pugh says, bummed to be unable to attend on 5:15, but ready to get back on the bends with the full throat of the 17s. Matt Wagner, on allowing 100% capacity, thinks it's too soon, given that only 25% of the state is fully vaccinated. I get that lost revenue from last year is a concern, but is it worth taking a chance? A phased-in approach would be better in his opinion. What do you think?
I don't think any of us have the answers to it, first off. I don't. I will put my hand up and say that I don't know. There's a couple elements to it that I think we do know. The Braves were going to be first of anybody in the state of Georgia to go full capacity in a large venue. That was going to happen. It's hard to not do that when the Braves are doing it. That does have a very strange look, and there's going to be a lot of comments made about it. That doesn't mean you should just do it because the Braves are doing it, but that does increase the pressure to do it, I think. I don't think it's a money grab, and I do push back on that one, Matt, because I think they've, in the situations where they have had increased capacities, they are increasing the expenditures to do that. It's not like it's going to be back to what the game was last March with the stadium spend on everything. The Texas Rangers did start this, Tommy. That is correct.
Mm-hmm.
But in the state of Georgia, the Braves pushed it further than others would. The Braves are going to be full capacity about a week before Atlanta United will. I think you're still going to have huge stadium expenses of just game day operations with everything. You have more staff, you have more cleaning, you have a lot of different things that go into it. So, yeah, you want people in for the financial side, of course, but I don't think that's driving this. The thing about the vaccinations, and again, none of us are doctors or scientists on this, but it's not hard to see that the mass vaccination sites are at the point now where they're basically begging people to come in and show up and get vaccinated. I don't think it's a demand issue, or I don't think it's an access issue anymore. I think it's a demand issue. You can walk in and get vaccinated at most places that offer it now. Period. You can just walk in. Don't have to have an appointment. If you're 16 and up, you can just walk in. Should businesses stay closed because there's a large number of people who don't want to get vaccinated? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. I don't know how to solve that. But I don't know what the businesses should do either. It's a very difficult situation for all of us to be in and figure this out. None of us know. And I don't think, as people are talking about the demand issue, I don't think that teams and businesses should be punished because there's a large number of people who aren't going to get vaccinated. You know, I mean, at some point, people have had their opportunities, and yeah, there's always situations with individuals who, didn't have an opportunity to do it, haven't had an opportunity to do it, haven't had time to do it. But then that gets back to us making personal decisions. If we're not comfortable going, if we know that, if we have kids, for example, and that's a whole different conversation about this. And Thomas, it's not punishing, probably wasn't the right word, but I don't know what the right thing is at this point. And I think it's hard for anybody on the outside and anybody who is in these situations to know what that is too. Because I don't know, and I don't know how you make these decisions. I wouldn't want to be in the position to make it. I wouldn't, because I'm generally going to be as careful as possible. But when the other team that's playing at the same time is going to go full capacity, that puts an extra amount of pressure on you too. And that makes it a tougher decision, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And you're looking at the other teams in whatever league you're in. You're looking at how they're handling it, and then you're looking at the folks that are inside your market and seeing how they're handling it. And yeah, when one franchise is giving full capacities or larger numbers, then there is that psychological knock-on effect, for lack of a better phrase, where it's like, okay, what are they doing? How did they come up with their numbers? What do they know? Do they know something we don't? They're doing something, and obviously for Major League Baseball, it's an open air situation versus what you're seeing, with teams that are inside facilities. There are a lot of other of those psychological knock-on effects that you have to consider. And no, I wouldn't want to be in any of those meetings about trying to figure out, okay, how do we come up with our percentage? I mean, I think last night in Portland, it was 15%. I think it was the same in Columbus last night as well. It wasn't a very high capacity number. I don't think it was any higher than 20 or 25%. And literally, this is a case by case, business by business, state by state thing. It has its macro look, and then you have to go and you're looking at it all the way down to the micro level. And it is one of these 3D things that you have to tackle on a daily basis to come up with the answers that you're coming up with. And no, I don't think that. Once again, I don't think that there is a uniformed answer. I think that it's something that everyone is having to look at individually from a business perspective. And then from a personal perspective, it's where are you when it comes to your vaccination? Where are you when it comes to your level of comfort and being out in civilization these days too?
Yeah. I know it's a hot button issue for a lot of people, and I 100% understand it. I was super careful during everything, and I'm still careful even though I am fully vaccinated. I get it. I understand. I don't know how to make that decision for everybody. For the businesses, I'd love to see more incentives for people to get vaccinated. Absolutely. I'd love to see that. I did ask our resident lawyer, Thomas Jewin, in the Twitch pitch, if the fact that it's the World Congress Center is involved in this because of the property and the state association with it, like, does that make it a different conversation than what we see at LAFC, where they have a vaccinated section? And I know the HIPAA thing, thanks to our lawyer section on Discord, has been able to break that one down. I understand that element of it, but I just wonder and I don't even know how this falls because of is it state property? Does the state have a say in how things are run? I honestly have no idea. Yeah. I just wondered if that was an element to this that makes it a little more difficult in what you can do in the stadium in those situations. I don't know. You got to do what's right for you. You got to do what's right for you more than anything. If you're comfortable going, go and enjoy yourself and follow all the protocols, because they're not going away. If you're not comfortable going and you have season tickets, as Colonel pointed out, you can opt out, full credit, no issues for that. So that option is there. So I would tend to agree that I don't think it's a money grab, because that option is on the table. It's tough. I don't know. That seemed to be the recurring theme here during all of this is we're learning more every day. I mean, recommendations are changing. Things we're learning more about it. I mean, we're learning all the effects of the vaccines and what that means going forward for you, because we didn't have them long ago. We didn't have them 6 months ago. Yeah. So we don't know what 6 months with a vaccine in your system does. We don't know anything about this stuff. It's brutal. I don't know. I was a little surprised, but when the rumblings on the Braves side ramped up, because I think I'd originally heard it would be in the summer where they would go full capacity. I know they wanted to do it before the All-Star game, which is not going to be here now. That was the plan. When that started moving up, I figured it would have to, just because it's hard to fight that current. And that current's pretty strong right now in the state. And we'll see about other teams in the league. We'll see what happens with other teams in the league. I didn't expect Atlanta to be the first one. I didn't see that coming, but things are moving really fast in this area.
Yeah, and a couple of other folks have chimed in on Twitter as well. Michael Head, to your comment that was made in the lawyer section of the Discord about selling your tickets, letting the club know, giving credit, and that kind of a situation. Colonel came in on Twitter, on the Twitter side, and he says he thinks Atlanta United missed an opportunity to do a huge service to the community, state, and society. If they'd require vaccinations to attend, it would have had an impact on our, and this is his wording, pathetic vaccination rates.
That's the thing, is I don't know if they could, and I don't know. I don't know if that was possible. I believe New York did that. I believe Madison Square Garden had that in place for Knicks games. I don't know the details on that, and that's, again, way above my pay grade on anything, so I'm not sure. I think the people with the stadium, which is all connected, did a massive service in having the mass vaccination site and then making it available to just basically drop in as fast as they possibly could. I think the ability to get vaccinated has been there for anybody who wants it or needs it. And it's your decision if you don't. I do think it's going to make it more difficult to get rid of this stuff, because that's how mutations and all that come. But I don't know. I don't know. We're learning more about it every day, and none of us exactly know. We're all figuring it out. And I was surprised. I'm not going to lie. I was surprised. But I've also felt safe every time I've been in the building with any number of fans or any number of people since we returned to the building. And I've been really, really impressed with everything that Mercedes-Benz Stadium and the crew have done from a staffing perspective. Okay, it is the top of the hour. John, we're going to do a quick read, so you're going to have to go fast. Okay. And then we're going to get into, on the other side of the read, the USL Championship Weekly. And we're going to hear about the Louisville City situation to kick it off. But first, John is going to tell us about our good friend, Steve Apolinsky.
Apolinsky & Associates, LLC, proud supporters of everything soccer down here in the SDH network. For wrongful death and serious injury matters, one place you need to go, Apolinsky & Associates, LLC. 3 different ways you can do it. Pick up the phone, 404-377-9191. Shoot Steve an email directly, steve@aa-legal.com. Go on the World Wide Web, large device or small. Type in aa-legal.com in your address bar. Hit the enter key, the return key, the arrow key. Whatever advances you to the home page for Apolinsky & Associates, LLC. You get to see all the different cases they can handle for you, all the different rewards and accolades that they have accrued in their over 30 years of experience, getting over $40 million in judgments for their clients in Georgia and Alabama. Therefore, 2 time zones are represented. And if you still have questions after looking at the homepage, there's a pop-up window that pops up, because that's what pop-up windows do. They pop up 24/7, 365 and a quarter. Recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend Magazine for being one of the top 100 firms in this here state of Georgia. For wrongful death and serious injury matters, one place that you need to go. Proud supporter of everything SDH and the SDH network. It is Apolinsky & Associates, LLC, and the website is aa-legal.com.
I think people are going to like that read. I like that style. I like the super fast read. I liked Micro Machines as well. All right, it's that time. Let's hear about the USL Championship in our USL Championship Weekly. Take it away, John Nelson.
Someone sounding like Trent Reznor and Nine Inch Nails or the People's Court brings us into SDH's look at the USL Championship and our guest to break things down for one of the big stories this week in the USL Championship. The play-by-play voice for Louisville City. For Lou City, it is Jeff Greer, also host of Soccer City Radio, hanging out with John and Jason. It is J3 or 3J. I don't know how to make this broken down, but Jeff, thanks for hanging out with us here and turning it into 3Js as I look at the USL Championship kicks off here on Thursday.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Okay, so, we can talk about the match, and we'll get into that in just a little bit with Atlanta United 2 and how things came out in opening weekend there at Lynn Family. But after the match, all of a sudden, the coach that you had on the touchline is no longer the coach on the touchline. And I guess the question is, what happened?
That's a great question, and I wish I had a better answer than it's still rather unclear. I know that there's a non-disclosure agreement, so a lot of people have been very tight-lipped about what actually transpired to lead to the actual parting of ways, and they made sure to term it that way, I'm sure, as part of the agreement for the as part of that NDA. All I can speak to is that there had been some speculation that there's a lot of different decision makers at Louisville City, and as with anything, it's going to run into situations where people might disagree on how things go. But it was like a sack of bricks. Just all of a sudden, it's like, oh, okay, so that happened after an entire preseason and the first match of the season. But yeah, I'm speaking truthfully. If I knew, I would tell you guys. I don't know what it was that transpired that led to the final decision. But I do know that they're pretty excited about Danny Cruz and the chance to kind of move forward and keep playing. I guess if that was going to happen, it was going to happen when they had a 2-week break between matches.
Yeah, I think it caught everybody by surprise who's followed USL Championship and Lou City and all the success. How much have you had a chance to talk before this, and I don't know if you've had a chance since, to talk to Danny Cruz and kind of get a sense of where he is and how ready he is for this job with a lot of pressure on it, because this is a team that's expected to be a success.
Well, we were actually supposed to talk to him tonight as part of our weekly Soccer City radio show. I think it's his first interview. So I can report back later and have a better answer later on tonight. But no, I mean, he's really widely respected. He knows the game really well. He obviously has been on staff. I'm sure it's a little uncomfortable for him with the way things went down, but he knows the players and knows, presumably, we'll get into it tonight, the way he wants to play. Louisville City is actually a team, I think, that's set up pretty well to play a variety of ways. They can play 3 at the back. They can play the pressing, the gegenpress sort of 4-3-3 that has become so popular. They can play, in fact, there were a couple of times on Saturday where it almost looked like they were in a 4-4-2 at times and sitting with those lower blocks once they had the lead later in the match to accommodate for some of the speed that Atlanta United 2 has with its younger guys. So I think they're a pretty versatile group, and to his credit, John Hackworth and his staff, and I know James O'Connor in the front office, they worked really hard to get guys in who can play multiple positions and fill different roles throughout the field. So I would think that that Danny will have a lot of different tools at his disposal and would be able to kind of shapeshift if needed or continue to play the way that obviously has been so successful for Louisville City over the past few years.
And it's a veteran side for those that haven't had the chance to look at Lou City and see that these are a bunch of veterans that know what they're chasing after every year. It was a slow start last year, getting to a conference final. And I think that one of the big marquee names that attracts folks to looking at Lou City is having a guy like Cameron Lancaster up top that really is one of the most prolific scorers in league history, really.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is he wasn't all that connected on Saturday. I mean, he played well because he's Cameron Lancaster, and he typically will at least insert himself in some situation and uncork something from 25 yards or something like that. I mean, he's got such a crazy nose for goal, and those half spaces, you really have to close him down immediately whenever he's within 30 yards of goal. And he pulled that one shot. I think it was like 25 yards out, and it was close enough that you're like, okay, yeah, that he's still there. But it speaks to Louisville City's quality that they're able to pump out a couple of goals and keep working for them after an hour with Cameron Lancaster being relatively quiet. But it is interesting the way they used him at times last year, because there was a stretch where he wasn't getting as involved as they want him to be, and obviously he's going to be the focal point for all attacking purposes for the whole season, any season on whatever team he's on, and they would bring him a little bit deeper. And again, I'm not comparing him to Harry Kane, but similar to how Tottenham started to pull Harry Kane a little bit deeper so they could at least get the ball at his feet. And use his passing ability, because Cameron Lancaster is a pretty good passer. And when you have guys like Napo Masoso and Antoine Openo, Niall McCabe isn't as fast as he used to be, but can still make runs. And certainly Brian Ownby when he's available. They've got a lot of options who can run off of him. So I'd be interested to see if they try to bring him a little bit deeper after this past weekend where he wasn't really able to get too involved. And to their credit, Atlanta United too really dealt with the high press pretty well early on, and that's usually where, if you can get a couple of turnovers, you can get Cam Lancaster on the ball quickly and get him kind of revved up. So, but he's really a key player for them, obviously, and they're going to keep finding ways to get him involved.
Our Atlanta audience is asking a couple questions about what did you think of Atlanta United 2 in that first match, and were there any players that stood out to you that you were surprised by?
Well, I know that the late goal was scored down that left flank or defensively the right side, but I had actually seen Aiden McFadden as a college player at Notre Dame, and I thought he played pretty well for a guy who's kind of thrown into the fire. So I think he'll be a nice player. Certainly all of the teenagers, super quick, lots of energy. I thought they were all of the young, really super young guys stood out to me as guys who have some quickness to them. Caleb Wiley looked pretty good as another fullback. But again, as you guys mentioned, it is such a veteran Louisville City squad that they can sprinkle in a teenager or two like Jonathan Gomez, and Akil Watts isn't a teenager anymore, but he's a really young guy still, and basically have the maturity and the shape and the quality to work around those guys and let them kind of capture their flair. And I know Atlanta United is mixing in a lot of really young guys, but I also really like the whole front three. I mean, I thought that they were annoying in a way that they wanted to be annoying, and were able to kind of force Chris Hubbard to distribute a little bit cleaner. That was a real problem for Louisville City last year with Ben Lunt, especially early in the season. They had a really hard time against teams that pressed high. So I was impressed with the youngsters that Atlanta United had, and I would think that they're going to be a team that, I don't know. It's so hard with some of these second teams, so to speak, with all these young guys. You just don't know. The results are probably always going to be uneven unless they just perfectly capture the zeitgeist of a season. And I just know that they're going to be really difficult for a lot of teams to deal with because of those fresh legs, even with the short bench that I know they had on Saturday, which was atypical for any team going through the season.
Jeff Greer, play-by-play voice for Lou City and Soccer City Radio, hanging out with us here for another couple of minutes as we look at the USL Championship here on Soccer Down Here. Let me build it out a little bit for you. When you look at the division, because we know that it's the top four heading to the postseason, when you look at the division on the whole, what are you looking at from the other teams that are going to be chasing after those playoff spots and chasing after Lou City this year?
Yeah, I mean, Louisville City, the expectation is every year, it's not like And I know the divisions are a relatively different concept than what we're used to, but they don't just expect to make the playoffs. They don't expect to win a game in the playoffs. They expect to be in at least the Eastern Conference Final. And it has become – it's kind of funny because I'm in Louisville. I moved here 8 years ago. I've always been familiar with Kentucky basketball down the road in Lexington, but the expectations have become very similar. Kentucky basketball expects to be in the Final Four. Anything else is a disappointing season. And Louisville City is kind of like that. They expect to be in the Eastern Conference Final. You never know what can happen, like it did this past fall with the Rowdies coming to town and playing an excellent match and winning. But Louisville City expects that. They expect to be there. And I'll be interested to see what happens with Danny at the helm so early in the season. I think he can kind of get his feet under him. I don't know if he's interim the whole season. And I know you guys are dealing with a similar situation where you're not quite sure what the long-term situation might set up to be. But the talent is there. I would say the team that always intrigues me, and this is such a regional bias, but Indy 11 always, because of that rivalry, because they play each other 4 times. I know that Louisville City last year when they played St. Louis a couple more times in Indy 11, they would switch to a 3-back system at times just to give them a little bit of a different look, and it worked. It worked. So I think Indy 11 is a really intriguing team to me. The team they play next, Birmingham Legion, is an interesting team as well. I know there's people who are concerned about that matchup early in the season. But Louisville City, guys, they have 7 of their first 9 games are at home. So if you're and you mentioned this earlier, the slow start, then they've had them. It's like every year for the past. I mean, seemingly every season they get off to a slow start and they kind of build to a crescendo and obviously storm into the playoffs and do wonderfully there. But this is a great opportunity to buck that trend and start the season strong, turn the stadium that they have, this brand new stadium. And I'm not just saying this because they pay me. The stadium is spectacular. I've been in a lot of stadiums, both here and in Europe, and it's one of the nicest I've been in. So they need to turn that into a true home field advantage for them and the fortress, so to speak, as we always hear people talk about. And they have that opportunity to do that with this division and with this start to the season with all the home games.
My last one, Jeff, being in the market, I think you have a better sense of this than anybody else. What are the next steps for the entire club? And we'll include the NWSL side of it as well. You know, what is next on the horizon for soccer in Louisville? It feels like this growth has just been amazing to watch. I lived in Lexington during my middle school years and a couple of years of high school. I went to Lafayette High School. And, you know, the soccer scene at that time long ago was pretty small. I didn't know how Louisville would go, but now it feels like one of the rising markets for soccer in the United States.
Okay, so so I grew up in New England, okay? I've spent time in D.C., I've spent time in South Florida for work. I went to school in Pittsburgh, and I know what soccer markets look like. I've been in South Florida. I've been especially in D.C. I mean, D.C. was like every bar was packed in 2010 when I was there for the World Cup, which was awesome. And we're talking like not necessarily Spain versus England, but, you know, the smaller countries playing each other, the bars were packed. Everybody was watching soccer. So it was really fun to be in a place like that. I had just moved to Louisville at the end of 2013 into 2014. And you're talking to a guy whose family spent a summer in England in 1998 during the famous or infamous David Beckham red card World Cup and the loss to Argentina. And so I was indoctrinated at a pretty young age into soccer and especially English soccer and European soccer. And I thought I was just this weirdo for the longest time because it was like me, my brother, and his best friend, and we were always trying to find these like questionable streams that probably inundated our computers with viruses trying to find games. And in 2014, I'm like, okay, is there going to be any bar in this city that might have a game on in the corner that I can just go sit at and drink and watch soccer all day? And I was blown away with how much interest there was. And that was about a year before the club had been fully established and started playing. And so they've really captured – Louisville has a big young population in the city proper. You might call it hipster, you might call it yuppie, whatever you want to call it. But there's a big population of that. And it kind of butts heads with the southernness of Louisville that comes out during Derby Week, which ironically is right now. Mm-hmm. And so it really captured the momentum of the young part of this population. And it has been hugely popular. I mean, for big matches, they're getting 10,000 plus at the old baseball stadium where the sightlines were horrible. And now they've got this incredible architecture. So I think again, I know they pay me, but I also am being serious and can objectively say it sure seems like racing has really tapped a new nerve with young families, with women in this community. It's absolutely awesome watching them unfurl the banners and everything at these matches. And then Louisville City has this established credibility here as a winner and a fun team to watch over the years. So the combination of those two, you're starting to hear the Women's Cup is coming, PSG and Bayern on the women's side coming here in August. I mean, it's just like it's like a spaceship. It feels like, and we're on the rocket launch. So I know you guys can appreciate what it's like when a community captures soccer the way Atlanta has, and Louisville feels like a smaller market that has kind of done the same thing. And then once we get that full capacity stadium allowed to be full to the 15,000, I guarantee you we're going to hit that a few times with some big matches this summer and in the fall.
So then last question on the board comes from our Twitch pitch, and our listeners and viewers want to know, okay, so then who is your favorite team from Europe or England? Who's your team that you follow?
So, okay, in the late 90s, I became really good friends that one summer with this kid, Nathan, who we've stayed friends all these years, and he was Manchester United. And my brother and I kind of went back and forth on like, do we want to support Nathan or do we want to kind of butt heads with him? And I picked Leeds. And at the time they were, regularly top 4, top 5. They were in the Champions League. They had the magical run to the semifinals. They lost to guys Mendieta and Valencia in the semifinals, which was heartbreaking for me in high school. And that's where a lot of the questionable streams come in because Leeds then fell off the face of the map for like 20 years. And I had to figure out a lot of times how to get matches on my TV or computer, and it was quite the challenge at times. But I've stuck with them through and through, and I feel like so many other people have been rewarded with getting Marcelo Bielsa in charge the last couple of years and watching that club completely on the upswing now. So that has been my team for 20 plus years, and I'm happy to say that I was in on the original wave at least in the 90s, and then back with them again. I know the 70s and the older teams were also really good, but I was not alive. So, but yeah, my favorite players are always like Lee Boyer. I always loved Ian Hart. Harry Kewell was so fun to watch. I always have a special spot for them, and that's the team that I'm happy to still be sticking with as they're having a great season this year.
All right, time for the plug. For those that want to listen to you call the matches for Lou City, that want to catch up with you on Soccer City Radio, anything having to do with Jeff Greer, how do they do it?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter at Jeff Greer, Greer. Typically, we'll tweet out links and stuff before we get started on anything so people can follow it there. And then your best bet is just ESPNLouisville.com. We've got all the Soccer City Radio shows both live on there streaming from 6 to 7 on Thursday nights. And then also we have the podcast version for people if they want to listen to it later. And then any Louisville City game, if you want to listen to it on the radio, it's a totally different medium for listening to the sport, but it's fun. As you guys know, you can listen to those also on ESPNLouisville.com.
Jeff, as always, great to catch up with you. Great to get your perspective on what's happening in Lou City with Hackworth out, Danny in, the first match going on the board. Thanks for being a part of Soccer Down here in our USL Championship Weekly segment. We'll catch up with you soon, my friend.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, guys. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks, Jeff.
And we'll get to catch up with him about Leeds and how things continue to progress there as well as the season goes. Leeds guy, you got to like that too.
Got to like that. You've got some other coaching drama in the USL Championship. Louisville's not cornering the market on this. The Oakland Roots haven't played a game in the USL Championship yet. They've got a new coach in place. It's the old coach back in place, and we'll see what happens with Oakland. The situation there's a little bit harder to figure out. Dario Pot was named the coach going into the preseason late last year when Jordan Farrell became the technical director, leaving the touchline. Preseason, not so great. 5-1 loss to Sacramento, lost to Tacoma, lost to Las Vegas. They lost 3-2 to San Jose after having a 2-0 lead. It was announced earlier this week that Dario Pot's mutually parting ways with the club, and he was quoted in the press release. He said, "This has been a unique learning experience, which I am thankful for. I wish all the staff and players an exciting and positive season and beyond. Thank you." But he didn't actually coach a game for the team in competition, and now it's back to Jordan Farrell, who's going to be the interim head coach. They look for a new head coach, and they start in 2 weeks.
And they are listed in 20th of the 31 USL Championship sides in the power rankings that have come out for the first time. No real surprises when it comes to the folks at the top of the power rankings from the USL Championship. You know, you look at the top five, it's Tampa, and they've got Charlotte this weekend. You know, we caught up with Connor Antley last week and got his perspectives on what it's going to be like for Tampa to have the first couple of matches in their season at home to build up points there. You've got Phoenix coming out of the West there at number 2. El Paso, as they made their big run last year, they're at number 3. Lou City, they're at number 4 with a win under their belt. Obviously, the gap time between now and their next match will help, you know, integrate things. But they got off to a great start with the win against Atlanta United too. And then number 5 is San Antonio when it comes to the power rankings. They've got Colorado Springs this week. And Colorado Springs last week, they got to break in their new downtown stadium for one of their preseason matches. And so it's going to be a great season for Colorado Springs as well with their new downtown venue. And it's gotten a lot of rave reviews out of the blocks.
Yeah, I was a little surprised to see San Diego at 10th in the power rankings. They haven't played yet. They have the big opener on Friday night where they go to Phoenix. That game will be interesting. Some of the people who were involved in the incident last year where San Diego walked off the field are not with Phoenix anymore. The player involved is actually in Birmingham. Right. All that was resolved in actually a really surprisingly smooth way in some ways. And it felt like an opportunity, but I wonder if that kind of unfinished business role carries over here because San Diego didn't get to finish that match. And I thought they were really impressive last season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The preseason has been good for them. Let's see how they look. 10th felt low for me. Mm-hmm. FC Tulsa at 7 after their impressive win over OKC Energy. Okay, I can get that. Sacramento at 8. We'll see. Birmingham at 9 feels a little high. I've not been as high on the Birmingham Legion, but they have made the playoffs. They've been a solid, if not spectacular, team. I think San Diego can jump them. I think Indy 11 can potentially jump them. And Indy and Birmingham play on Saturday. I think that's an important game for people to look at if you're following Atlanta United 2, because that's a conference game or a division game. That one's at 7:30 on Saturday night in Birmingham. Tampa Bay plays Charlotte at 7:30 on Saturday night. Atlanta United 2, who we will have a twos review on Sunday for their trip to Oklahoma to face OKC Energy FC. It's an 8:30 Eastern time kick, so there is a little bit of overlap with the first team, but you can watch the first team in the game that starts at 7 o'clock against the New England Revolution, and then you can pick up after the game late in the first half for the twos out in Oklahoma. So we will have a twos review on Sunday, digging into that game a little bit deeper like we did last week, and that'll come after every game. Just sometimes it might be the next day, depending on our schedules.
wrapping up the schedule for the weekend. Couple of matches out west. Rio Grande Valley is they're going to have their season home opener against New Mexico United. A lot of folks are looking at New Mexico United as a possible contender out west. San Antonio, they get Colorado Springs. Sunday, there's one match on Sunday. The Miami FC gets to host Loudoun United, so we'll see what it looks like for the Miami FC and Loudoun, two teams that have obviously going at their approaches a little differently, but that's going to be your one match on Sunday in USL Championship, 7:30 Sunday night at Ricardo Silva. So that's a look at your schedule and your power rankings coming out of the blocks as the USL Championship season really starts to catch steam. Not everybody's on the board yet with their first match, but you're getting that rhythm of the season now where folks are getting into their schedules.
Yeah, it's going to start to ramp up as everybody gets active. I want to see what Oakland does next week with their newly installed former coach as the interim coach. I still would love to know what happened there, and maybe one day we'll hear what happened in Louisville. Yeah. It's a weird situation with two teams that a lot of people are looking at going into 2021 who have coaching changes either before they get started or after game one.
And your first game for Oakland is at Phoenix.
That's not easy.
Welcome to the 2021 season, Oakland Roots. It's the late game next Saturday night, May the 8th. So once again, that's going to be an interesting dynamic when it comes to Oakland getting their season underway with their coach, who was their coach 13 days before your season opener, is no longer your coach. So that is a look at the USL Championship for this week here at SDH. Thanks to Jeff Greer, the play-by-play voice for Lou City, and the host of Soccer City Radio for hanging out with us. That's week one in the championship.
I'm kind of liking that music the more I hear it.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out if it's 9 Inch Nails or something like that.
It's not, because they wouldn't give us that opportunity.
Oh, come on!
No, they Trent Reznor isn't giving me tracks to use. I'm sorry.
Yo, Trent.
I don't have Trent Reznor's name in my black book of contacts, so don't even ask.
Well, and that's why I said it's either 9 Inch Nails or the People's Court. It just sounds like, when the folks are walking in for the initial review from the judge for People's Court, first defendant, da, 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 da. Second defendant, same music happens. And so that's why I said it sounded like one of those two for me. But yes, I'll take them both. It's good stuff.
Those are two very, very different things.
I know, absolutely different across the board. You could not be any more diametrically opposed to coming up with what the rationale is for the music. That is true.
Yeah, I don't think Trent Reznor and the People's Court are in the same ballpark.
You see Doug Llewellyn talking about Trent Reznor tracks after a judgment's being placed out there in the lobby.
No, not at all. That ain't happening.
Man.
That ain't happening. What is happening is we're about to get Niko Moreno on the line to talk about MLS, to talk about Champions League. We'll get his thoughts now that the Jefferson Soteldo deal is done. Niko was not as high on it as some others were. So we'll get into all of this. Lots of different things to talk about with our friend Niko Moreno, and Mateo is getting to business and pulling up Niko on the line. It's early out on the West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
But Niko always takes his time for us on Thursdays, which is awesome. Catch him on Pulso Sports. Catch him on Sounder at Heart. And you can catch Niko on Thursdays on Soccer Down Here as he gets connected. What's up, Niko?
Hey, what's up, guys? How's it going today?
Good. How about you?
Good. Just early morning, coffee in my hand.
Attaboy.
I can't complain.
There we go. CONCACAF Champions League, Niko. It's been a ride for some of these teams. Caleb Porter not happy about the ride his Columbus Crew were on last night. Not happy about the video assistant referee, Chris Penzo. Portland did come back and get a draw. I don't know if that's going to be enough against Club America. What are your takeaways so far from CCL this week?
Well, the refereeing and the VAR is just CCL, baby. That's what it is. It comes with it. It's going to be there. You got to play for it. You got to factor it into your lung division or your equation, your formula, and the board. CCL refereeing, that has to be up there. So it's up to the teams, it's up to the players to make sure that those moments are not what's deciding the game. And honestly, Portland started off a little bit flat. The first half, Club America, I think, was more of the aggressor. It felt a little bit as if perhaps Timbers was playing a little bit conservative, as you probably should on a two-leg, game in which that the away goals can be decisive. And then once Club America scored, then they tried to kind of put it together. Second half was a lot better. Jimmy Chara was able to be a little bit more dangerous. Diego Chara dominating, honestly, the entire game. He is simply fantastic. It was chippy. It was physical. Mora and Kino and, all these guys really getting into it. But the 1-1 seems like a decent result just because they were able to at least tie it up. You looked into the game, and as the game progressed after that, first half goal, and you thought that maybe Portland didn't have enough, but they were able to put it together. There's a penalty kick. I think there is a handball. Obviously, it's something that a lot of players do. And obviously, rightfully so. Good PK. They end up getting it. But just CCL play. But I think Timbers did enough to maybe go to to Estadio Azteca at Club America and perhaps try to do something. I think they, regardless of the away goal, they put themselves in a situation where they can at least try to go get a score.
Yeah, 100%.
And at the same time, the early game, you had another one of those instances too, where Columbus, they got a lead and then they give up a late one, and Caleb Porter completely and totally just goes off the rails in his press conference talking about VAR and stuff that was pulled off the board. But the bottom line is that you can't leave someone that wide open that late when you've got a lead, because the same situation that we're talking about with Portland going to the Estadio Azteca with even numbers. Same with Columbus. Same with Columbus, with Monterrey, with even numbers when they could have had a lead heading into the second leg.
Yeah, I think this one, it's kind of a different game. I think that the result is not as positive or doesn't feel as reassuring as Timbers. Why so? Because of what you just said. You had the lead. You had the ability to really go back to Mexico with a lead. A very good home team in Monterrey that you could at least try to bargain or negotiate a result. Not just that, but the soft yellow that now has Lucas Solarayan suspended for the next game is huge. I mean, it is probably the biggest deciding factor in this game because what Lucas Solarayan can provide. He is your creator. He's also a finisher. He kind of gives your entire offense a different dimension. And without him, they're really going to struggle. They're going to be very direct. They're going to be very predictable. So because of that, the 2-2 result, the 2 away goals, it looks a lot tougher for Caleb Porter. But once again, you said it all. You cannot leave anybody that wide open. It's defensive mistakes. It is honestly mishaps or woes or however you want to call it, but those are things that it's on your team. It is on your players, and it's not on the referee, and it's not on anything else other than yourself.
We see those individual mistakes come up so often when you get to this level, when you're getting to the best of the best, and whether it's CONCACAF Champions League, Copa Libertadores, UEFA Champions League. We saw it here in Atlanta, and Atlanta United against Philadelphia. It was a great 45 for Atlanta, in my opinion, but then individual breakdowns in the second half cost you. What did you take away from Atlanta and Philly?
Man, It was hard for me to tweet and watch the game at the same time because I was watching the game in my car on my phone as my son practiced at Starfire Complex.
That's awesome.
And if you look at my tweets, I'm like, wait, what a first half by Atlanta, and Sosa, so interesting, so poised. and then I say nothing because I can't believe what's happening. And all of a sudden, Philadelphia gets ahead, and hey, you know what? I was like, it's all right. It's one goal. Hopefully, Atlanta can pick up where they left off and continue to get those nice buildups that we're having, good combinations, getting out wide correctly. I thought Barco at times looked really good, and it was just. I hate to say it, but I think it's a little bit on hindsight. I mean, you cannot go all out after a 1-0, being down 1-0, and then hope to get that back. And then once you're 2-0, you continue to bring numbers forward, and then you give Philadelphia the opportunity to just counter you, and it just looked sloppy in the back. It honestly was surprising how Philadelphia was able to just turn it around. Credit to them. Credit to Jim, credit to Montero, credit to Santos, who I mean, they had fantastic games. Obviously, Chirisko with both of the goals. I mean, it was honestly a good performance by a team, but I think it was a lot on hindsight this time around, perhaps being too aggressive or too stuck to your ways. We heard what he said in the press conference. He said, I love the way my team plays. And I love that. I love to hear that. I mean, that's what a lot of us, South Americans, we want to see the beautiful game. We want to see the aggressive offensive play. But in a two-leg, 180 minutes of play, you need to know how to work it. You cannot just go all out like that. So I was a little surprised of how aggressive Heinze was in this game.
Yeah, it was something he talked about afterwards, and I kind of felt it as I was watching it. And it's hard to know. Like, he mentioned, I think he said his team panicked a little bit after that first goal. And I'd love to know, and we'll never hear it because you're not going to share that, what was that conversation when you made a sub right after the goal and you brought on some fresh legs? Was it to go at that point, or was it to just keep playing the way that they were playing? Because that was my frustration, is I felt like even with the goal, Atlanta was the better team up to that point. They had plenty of time. They didn't need to change anything. If it came from Heinze to be more aggressive, after one, that would feel rushed to me. After two, it's tough. I almost feel like you have to try to get something in it at that point. And you're stuck either way. If you go for it, you give up the opportunity to give the third goal. If you don't go for it and it's 2-0 and you don't get anything out of it, you're still in a tough spot. Those individual mistakes on goal one where it's a breakdown in marking, and on goal two where it's Sosa and Jurgen Damm who have miscommunication, give it up, and then everybody's scrambling, that costs you. And there's only so much you can do when you have those breakdowns.
No, absolutely. It's honestly it. And I know that Heinze is a newer coach. I mean, he honestly doesn't have maybe the experience of other coaches around the league, and not to diminish his work, but maybe that's some of those learning curves that you have to kind of go through. Did he maybe think that his team was being so effective that he was going to just be able to turn this around? Perhaps. But you got to read the game a little bit better. And I mean, this is coming from just some guy, right? But, and just watching in the front of my car with my phone. But honestly, I did expect a little more from that first game from Atlanta, because they're really in a hole that it'd be almost impossible to dim themselves from. And once again, now you're going to be predictable. They know that you're going to have to go all out. You're going to have to make yourself scarce in the back and just bring numbers forward, and they're going to try to counter you again. So it's just a difficult situation. It's never good when you go into a second leg and you give your opponent that know exactly how you're going to play. They know exactly what you're going to do. So it's tough for Atlanta. I think out of all the scores, once again, I think Portland has the better score. I mean, Philadelphia is also MLS, right?
Yeah.
But speaking of more in that terms of Atlanta, Portland, and Columbus, I think Portland has the better score. And it's still a tough situation. They're still going to have to go play at Stadio Azteca, a very good team. But yeah, difficult week for MLS teams for sure.
All right.
With the exception of Philadelphia, of course.
Yeah.
Yes, with the exception of Philly. So since you got my next question, you already answered it just now. Let's get into the week that was in MLS. And from what happened out west, what were your headlines last weekend with the action in Major League Soccer?
I mean, it has to be Chicharito, right? I mean, I would love to say something else and give you guys some incredible, oh man, is that really it? No, but it's got to be Javier Hernandez, man. Honestly, it's impressive what Greg Vanney's been able to do. And I mean, I was sat here and said that they could be the team that was going to fall flat on their face. And they just look good. And Chicharito has refound his confidence, his instinct of goleador up front, typical Chicharito type goals, honestly, a lot of them right in front of goal, but it's still, it takes skill to be there. Subat has been great. The Toronto fella they just brought in, Victor Vasquez, has been great.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, they've been able to do something that Guillermo Barrios-Caloto was unable to do, is kind of bring that group together. You see it after every single game, what Javier Hernandez says, what Victor Vasquez says. I mean, they're all buying into this Greg Vanney new identity, and it's working for them. Now, I'm not ready to give them the belt and make them Western Conference champions or nothing, but I think they have something interesting going, because a lot of those questions that we were asking in our first show that we had together when you guys brought me on was that they don't have those incredible talented players out wide, but they've been able to kind of do what they do. It still bring really good services in for Javier Hernandez, put him in good positions. And so, yeah, I think that they're definitely the story. Now, Red Bulls, awful defending all around. They seem to have a lot of things going on that needs to get better at. So I think that's part of it, but you have to give credit where credit is due. And Greg Vanney and Javier Hernandez deserve it a whole lot. 5 goals in 2 games. I mean, man, I had him at 14 for the year. So, yeah, he might have that by next week.
The Galaxy went shopping in the second division in France again. They've added a center back, Sega Koulibaly, who's been at Nancy. He's been a regular there. This is, I think, a little bit of a weird team to figure out what they project to be. On paper, I think it's hard to put them at the same talent level as an LAFC, as a Seattle, I would say as a Portland, I would even say as a Minnesota. But so far, Greg Vanney is getting a lot out of this group, and to be able to be the only team with 2 wins, to be able to go cross-country and go to Miami in their home opener, their first game with fans in the building, and get what you got, and then come back home and deal with a difficult team in the way that they play in the Red Bulls and pick them apart and get things taken care of. Greg Vanney is doing the best coaching job in the league so far.
I totally agree. I absolutely agree. I mean, you see what Abilafanya was able to do. He's a player that was, okay, but he was able to really get forward, really get into the system. Dos Santos has been so inconsistent sometimes. He looks good. Yeah. People coming off the bench. I mean, it seems like he's really got a hold on this core group that perhaps does not have those superstar players in other positions around Javier Hernandez, but perhaps them playing for Chicharito is really working for them. And I mean, look, Chicharito just turns into Chicharito. That third goal where there's deflections and all of a sudden is in front of Javier Hernandez, man, that tells you everything you need to know. I mean, he's back. He put the magnet back on his arm or his neck or whatever it is, and the ball just sucks up to him, and he just puts it away, right? So it's been interesting to watch. I would also put Austin. I think that they're a really interesting team. Yeah. And I didn't watch the game live. I had to go back and watch it. I should just watched it yesterday. And they really play good soccer. They've been really interesting in the way that they play out of the back. I'm not super into the whole Berhalter and Wolf identity of play, but I'm starting to see what he's trying to pull out of that. I mean, you could definitely see how he gets numbers forward and a lot of the the build-up plays, and Cecilio Dominguez getting those 2 goals is fantastic. Fagundes kind of finding his ground again as well.
I've always liked Diego Fagundes.
I've always liked Diego.
I've always wondered what the deal is when he's fallen out of favor in New England. I know Brad Friedel didn't rate him. Felt like he was in and out with Arena. Like, Diego Fagundes is such a talented player.
And the thing about this team is that you saw it getting built, and it made you think, wow, this is going to be a good team. And then they go week 1, and they don't look as good. And, I thought, hey, this is a really good team overall. I love the acquisition of Alex Ring, who is an anchor in the middle of the field. He's a veteran. He knows how to build winning teams around him. And a lot of the players that they brought in, Nick Lima, who's also a good veteran player in MLS, plus some of these South Americans that are just going to come in and play well. So I thought they played excellent against Colorado, and I thought they had a really good win.
And since we're on Austin, I mean, this week Austin takes on a team that has been a head scratcher out west so far in Minnesota. When you look at Minnesota, you're sitting there and you're thinking about one thing that you're expecting out of them in 2021, and that hasn't been the case with Minnesota so far this year.
All right, hold on. Before we get into Minnesota, John, you're burying the lead. I need Nico's take on David Ochoa. I need Nico's take on what happened with Ochoa kicking the ball in the stands and getting called a clown by Minnesota players and saying he's not very good by Adrian Heath. What was your take on all of that situation?
Hey, I like it, honestly. I mean, I think that if you do that type of outburst, then you better get ready for the consequences.
Better back it up, brother.
That's right. You got to back it up. And Adrian Heath it's all good for him standing up for his fan base, for his team, for his guys. You were obviously going to see the players react. Mm-hmm. So yeah, absolutely. No, I think that Ochoa, honestly, I got to be with Adrian a little bit on this. If I don't got the name, if I don't got the, I don't know, the career behind me, I don't know if I'm going to be doing all that. I mean, you expect him to be a little bit more humble to a certain extent. I don't know, but he did it. He did the crime. I really have nothing else to say, but I agree with the way that Minnesota reacted overall. I mean, it's totally on him. I mean, we saw it a little bit when Kaku hit that fan in the face. That was rough. That became a whole thing. I mean, this was not as bad, but because of the gesture, the gesture that he tried to put out there, hey, man, go at him.
It's going to be fun when they play next time. What are your thoughts on Minnesota as a whole? Because that became the story afterwards and not the fact that they're 0-2.
It completely it was a perfect story for them to just, hey, focus over here. We're not playing bad. Focus over here. The guys we brought in ain't working. Absolutely. It is concerning. And I'm not really sure what it is that Minnesota needs to do aside from just getting these guys more time playing together. Osvaldo Alonso, I think, is missed in the midfield. I don't think that they have that attitude. And you need that sometimes. You need that guy that's pulling the reins and holding guys accountable and running around. I'm not a huge Will Trapp guy. I think he's an okay player. I don't think he's somebody that's going to make a huge difference on your midfield the way that Ozzy could. Gregus just doesn't look as commanding as he has in past seasons. Reynoso continues to be very intermediate. He shows you little flashes of what he can do, but just doesn't do it through the whole 90 minutes. And then up top, it just has not been working up top. They just, ever since last season, that's always been a knock on Minnesota, is the lack of a real 9, a finisher, a killer, a Hernandez, a Raul Ruiz. I mean, they just haven't had that. And Wanchope has not obviously had enough time to really prove if he can or cannot be that. But at this point, it's just not working. Although when he came here to Seattle, he honestly was a no-show for a lot of the game. And here in this game, I think they played him a little bit wider or more on the sides, and he still wasn't able to do a lot. So I think they're very limited in the final third, and it's concerning because you would think that a guy like Reynoso would kind of put it all together, but that just has not been the case. But it's concerning.
Yeah, Minnesota is such a weird case because they're finally spending now, and they're giving the resources to have a top team on the field. I felt like Avila would be an upgrade from Luis Amarilla from last year, but it's still early. We haven't really completely seen it yet. But at some point, and I felt like Adrian Heath needed to take some of the blame for blowing the lead last year in the Western Conference Final. I think he mismanaged that game in the second half. Do there need to be some questions about Adrian Heath and getting this team to that upper echelon, being the guy in charge?
I think you do. I think you got to look there and up. I mean, you got to look at the guys that they brought in that haven't really worked out. We talked about Juan Chopa's history of injuries, and now he's already injured.
Yep.
So the guy was talented, but you knew that coming in. Those red flags had to been shown, and you brought in a guy that had those type of issues, fitness-wise and injury-wise, and it hasn't worked. Luis Amarilla was a good guy, but was never able to really fit. They had Chacon, another really interesting prospect last year that never, ever got to the field. So, yes, you have to look into Adrian and see if he's the issue, and perhaps there's got to be a new change of identity as a whole, and question the guys up top and the guys they're bringing in. Because if I'm bringing in guys and they're not being able to expose their potential, either because of injuries or they're not fitting into the game plan, there's a problem there. Mm-hmm. So I think Adrian does have to be accountable for a lot of these losses. And if they can't push it together, if they can't pull it together by week 8, man, I'd be surprised if he's still in Minnesota.
Because usually you kind of look, a gauge for me when you're looking at how a team is going to be philosophically and on the pitch is usually the quarter pole. And so I'm going to let you get a sip of your coffee here. So usually it's the quarter pole for me to sit there as a gauge as to how things are integrating. And you saying, if match 8, that's just about the quarter pole to figure out how things would be in Minnesota.
It has to be. And it's because you are not talking about a team that has a whole bunch of new components. You're hoping that you have a core group, that you already established a good team last season, and you're able to build on that. But we're not seeing that. So that threshold of, hey, we're going to give this team X amount of games has to be a lot more compact. And 8 games, for me, is right on for where you got to be thinking, hey, we need to make a change now. We need to figure out what we're doing and really get this team where it can be, because you got the fan base, you got the stadium, you got some of the interesting players, but you're not getting the results. So you got to shake things up, and you got to wonder, that fan base is always asking questions. They know that they should be doing better. They're one of the most active on social media, and they're always with their team, and they want to see better out of this Minnesota team. So I do question some of that. I really like Adrian. I think when we talk to him, he's such a great guy, and he really explains the X's and O's. But at the end of the day, it's about putting your team together, getting results, and that's it. Another example is Guillermo Vargas-Escaloto. Love the guy. Had a great background. You loved everything about him, but guess what? He just never brought in results, so he had to go. They gave him a long time, a very long time to kind of put it together. He was never able to. I think Adrian should get a lot less. I think it's time to start asking questions.
Yeah, I think they have expectations that they are nowhere near at the moment. You get to this end of May section of the season. You've got that double international break at the beginning of June. I wonder if you'll see teams make moves at that point. And we talked about it coming into the year. Like, it didn't feel like there were a bunch of hot seats coming in, because you had a lot of new managers. You had a lot of situations where guys are established. Minnesota has maybe become a hot seat. I don't know how hot it actually is. I think it should be. I don't know if it is truly hot. We'll have to wait and see how things go. But is there anybody else that you're looking at from the managerial side? We talked about Greg Vanney and what his impact has been on the Galaxy. Josh Wolf so far with Austin. Heath on the negative side in Minnesota. Is there anybody else who's jumped out to you so far around the league that you're really liking the way that they're playing due to the manager, or you have questions about the long-term viability of that manager?
That's a tough one. Speaking of new coaches and their impact, I think Inter Miami is one that kind of comes up. I think that new manager has been able to at least give this team the opportunity to get those big time players to shine. Higuain is having a good year, and I think Chris Henderson brought in some really good players, and I think no one can discard the effect and the impact he's had on this roster. So I think that's interesting, and that's a lot of what we're talking about here in Minnesota. In Miami did it the first year. They knew that Alonso wasn't working. They knew that upper management wasn't working, that they needed better to do, and they go get Chris Henderson. They go get the new head coach and Knowles, and it's starting to work. And a guy that I really like that I don't think he's in a hot seat, but I've been disappointed on is Luchi Gonzalez in Dallas. They are too talented to be where they are right now. And you got to start asking questions about Franco Jara and about exactly where this team is going, because something's just not quite working there. I think Luchi is a great head coach, but they're another team that has not been able to pull results up. So he's another head coach that I think needs to start turning things around, or the seat's going to start getting a little hot.
Well, let me give you one real quick, and it may not necessarily be at that double international break, but at the end of the season. What about Bob Bradley at LAFC?
Whew,
because you have all these expectations, and you're getting to a point, and then you get into a deep playoff game, and then it doesn't happen. Yes, I know you got to the end of CONCACAF Champions League last year, but what about the pressures that are at LAFC and not getting over the hump? Would that give Bradley some pause, or folks some pause on Bradley, say at the end of this year, if it happens again?
Wow, that's a real good one, because Bob is so Bob that you don't think of his job ever being in jeopardy. You know, he's such a charismatic and influential coach overall. But yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, LAFC didn't build this team with the expectations of just getting close to a championship. They won a championship, and Bob Bradley, for whatever reason, has just not been able to deliver. A lot of it has been just encountering really good teams in the playoffs. I thought that Sounders game at LAFC that Seattle wins before they're winning the cup in 2019 was one of the best LAFC teams there, and they were able to get beat out. So, oh man, I think you do got to start looking at that. If by next year, once again, LAFC gets there, but not quite there, a step behind or two step behind being an MLS Cup. And I think expectation has to be high. And he would be another casualty of, hey, we gave you, 3-4 years to put it together. You weren't able to bring us the ship. So goodbye. I really don't see a Siggy Smith scenario where, perhaps you allow the team to just build around and you give him 10 years to try to put it together, and, you win some Open Cups and you get far, but you don't quite make it. I think LAFC has too high expectations, and that fan base, that media, and that club in general will start asking questions if they don't quite make it to the cup. You're absolutely right.
All right, I'm going to end with this, Niko. A couple names have come up on the Twitch pitch as we're talking about openings and managers around the league. There is one big-name manager who it sounds like maybe is in line to take another one's job in Mexico, but Miguel Herrera, who has mentioned MLS in the past, he's out there. But now the reports with Tuca Ferretti talking about leaving Tigres at the end of the season. He's out of contract. There's talks that Piojo's going there. Who should bring in Tuca Ferretti into MLS?
Wow.
I'd love to see Tuca in this league. That'd be fun.
Tuca is I don't know if he's built for MLS. I mean, he might be watching half of the games from the stands. I mean, I'm not quite
That's a
sure
good
if
point.
MLS players are ready to be just damaged during practice and yelled at and called names. Man, honestly, I'm not kidding you. I don't think he's fit for MLS. I think players here expect a level of accountability and discipline, but I think that Tuca Ferretti is just like way beyond that line. Like there's discipline and then there's Tuca discipline, and don't be doing your hair, I don't want to see you in the Twitter, and I mean this guy might just take everybody's social media away. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like his style is very antiquated, and yes, he's a winner, but he's done it in one place, and that's something that you got to look at. It's not necessarily that he's done it in all these places. He's done it in one team or one organization that has given him the reins of all the money he could possibly get, has quality internationals from all over South America, and whatever he wants. He has Guignac and all these fantastic players. So I think MLS needs more coaches that are willing to put in the time, build franchises. I think he's done a really good job with the youth level at Tigres, but I think there's other coaches out there. I honestly don't feel like he'd be a good fit for MLS. I wouldn't want him in Seattle. I mean, with all due respect to El Tuca and all his great success, but I just don't think he'd be a good fit. You see guys walking out. Like I'm not getting in the bus.
But wouldn't you want to see him at another club so you could write about him and you could talk about him?
Sure. I mean, it would be fun. It would be fun to see him, maybe at LAFC and trying to tell Vela to stop doing his hair or something. I mean,
wow,
that would be interesting. But honestly, I just don't think he's a good fit. El Piojo, I would see him more here. I think he's very passionate, but he knows how to get with players and kind of be their guy. And he has a lot of that good personality and charismaticness to the way he does his business. And he's a good X's and O's guy. I mean, I've talked to him a couple of times exclusively for Pulso Sports. We had a good talk with him last year, and I couldn't say less about a guy who's done so much and been so successful for America. And I thought he was very successful with the national team as well. Until he started, throwing blows and stuff like that. But he really is somebody who I could see here. And he has been reached out. He told us that day that he's been reached out by quite a few MLS teams. But to your question, man, and not to overdo it, I don't think Tuca is MLS material. I just don't.
Be so entertaining.
And that's one guy's opinion right here. I mean, I'm just being candid with you guys. I mean, that's all I can do is just give you my take on it. Perhaps somebody's gonna be like, "Oh, this guy's an idiot." Of course,
we get that all the time, Niko. No worries. We get that all the time. That's the game. We love it, right? We all have our different opinions. We all see things differently.
You see the guys that have been successful here, from Latin America, and they just don't have the style. Look at Papi Oscar Pareja, what's he been able to do? He's just not that style. Almeida just doesn't have that style. I mean, all these guys that have came in, they just, they have that passion, but they know how to harness that and they know how to put it together. Giovanni Savarese is a great example. You saw how animated he was yesterday. Oh, handball, and he's running around, the box, and he's getting guys excited, but he's going to be very respectfful. He's gonna have his guys' backs, and he's not gonna be calling nobody names and stuff at practice. So you gotta have a little bit of that balance, and I don't think Tuca has that.
Yeah, we'll see what jobs open up. We'll see what Charlotte does. I think that's one that a lot of people are looking at with Charlotte coming into the league next year. What direction do they go with a large Mexican community around Charlotte? I think it's kind of a surprising one for some people. They could easily go in that direction and lean into it. I don't think they get Piojo because I do think he'll end up at Tigres. I mean, it just makes so much sense. I think he's been waiting for a big opportunity, looking for that payback after what happened in Mexico with Club America. But What direction does Charlotte go? Do they lean into the Latin American side? Do they lean into the Mexican side of things? Or do they go in a completely different direction? It's what's fascinating about this league. We're getting so many different influences from Central America, from Mexico, from South America, which are all different, from Europe. You've got some clubs that are going very Eastern European. I mean, you look at the Chicago Fire, and you look at the team that they have. Great talents. Kasper Shabilko coming into the league. Incredible talent. This league's really getting interesting with all these different influences.
And it's going to continue to get better because of that, because you have that ability to kind of bring it all together, and you got influences from all parts of the world. And I love to see it. Chicago's another team that I find really interesting. So I totally agree with you. There's just a different feel to MLS nowadays, from the young players coming in, from the technical directors that are coming in, coaching staff. I mean, it's just been amazing to watch, and it's going to continue to grow here, no doubt. And with Charlotte, I mean, I would be interested if they don't go after a guy like Gonzalo Pineda. He has the Mexican influence, but he's been under Brian Smetzer for a while. We know that Washington tried to go after him. DC United wanted him. They put him through the interviews. He has the Mexican influence, but understands the league well.
That's a really good shout.
Interesting.
That's a really good shout. Niko, before you go, we've got a little bit of breaking news here on the Atlanta side of things. Woo! The Mexican national team will be playing at Mercedes-Benz Stadium on June 12th against Honduras, and it's part of the friendly tour. That is right after the Nations League semifinals and potential final, and before the Gold Cup. But that's going to be at the Benz. That's going to be after the Benz is open 100% for MLS games. That could be a huge crowd for that match, and it's Tata Martino coming back to Atlanta again. So that's going to be a pretty big story this summer.
I think it's going to be huge, and I mean, you're absolutely right from all angles. One is how many spectators you're going to be able to fit in there, because it's not going to have enough room, because Mexican fans, they just showed you in Portland last night that they are willing to fly out to watch their team play, and they'll light up fireworks and everything on the stands. So it's going to be packed. It's in a southern area where even maybe some Mexican fans fly out from Mexico. It's going to be interesting. Tata Martino coming back to Mercedes-Benz. I mean, that's a great storyline overall. So that's huge. That's big. I'd be interested to see how he gets handled. I mean, I don't know how it's going over there in Atlanta, but right here in Seattle, King County just started to phase back into phase 2 because of, some uprises on COVID cases. And apparently it's not going to affect the sporting events, but it's always telling for me, because if he gets any higher, do they eventually affect sporting events? I mean, you got to look at that. So hopefully that's not the case.
That's going the other way here.
To get vaccinated, but
it's going the other way here with full capacity at Mercedes-Benz for Atlanta United starting May 15th. They're going to be the first in MLS to go all the way, and the state of Georgia has been pretty aggressive and open up. The Braves are going to be 100 capacity the week before that. So it's going the other direction in the state of Georgia and in Atlanta.
Oh no, that's huge. I'm really interested in how that's going to play out. I really hope that they'll be able to, find ways to make sure that nobody in the stadium is having symptoms and that there's temperature checks. But I mean, honestly, if you're talking about 70,000 or whatever, I mean that's really far-fetched. The logistics on that are impossible, to be honest, to just figure out how everybody's doing, getting everybody on an app and maybe answering some questions. I mean, I wouldn't want to be the logistics guy when it comes to that type of situation. So
it'll be 40. It'll be the soccer capacity, the lower tier. So 40-ish for most of the games. I know that there were plans to go open everything later in the summer. It's all fluid, and we'll see where this goes. But this is all starting to build up. Niko, we could go for hours with you. Thank you for the time. It feels like it flies by every week. We'll talk to you next week about everything else going on in MLS and CONCACAF and all of it.
No, absolutely. Absolutely, guys. Thank you. I love talking to you guys. I really could just sit here and talk to you guys for another hour as I sip my coffee. I'm not kidding you when I say it's like a great way to start my Thursdays now. I'm all ready to go, early in the morning. I may be like a jog away from just being completely active. So I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Nico. Make sure you're following him, El Rolo NW on Twitter. Nico, we'll talk to you next week.
Oh, yes, real quick, guys.
Yeah.
We're going to have a small Twitter space on at El Rolo NW today. We're going to have a few guys talking about different teams. We should have John Rojas. We should have Roberto Amrowitz, hopefully, if he's available. Franco Panizo talking about Inter Miami if he's available. Giovanni Garcia talking LAFC. We're going to have quite a few guys. So, do go at El Rolo NW. We're going to have a good discussion. Hop on in. If you guys want to chat, that'd be great.
Awesome. Thank you, Nico. We'll see you next week.
You good?
Yes, sir. Have a good one.
Nico Moreno, Pulso Sports, Sounder Hart, El Rolo NW on Twitter to make sure you're following him. What else we got on the Twitters on our end at Soccer Down Here, John?
We are caught up on Soccer Down Here's Twitter. Folks are having conversations amongst themselves about the college soccer scene in the state of Georgia and with what's going on with capacity in MBS. So folks are having conversations like they do on the Twitch pitch over on the Twitter side as well.
Very cool. Well, final questions really quickly. We'll grab a couple if they are there. Other things in the soccer world that we haven't touched on. You've got a negotiation going on with Orlando City and Barnsley about his loan for Daryl Dike, and is it going to extend through the promotion playoffs? It was a loan February 1st. It terminates May 31st, but Orlando has the right to recall after May 3rd. You're going into the promotion playoffs. They don't want to give him up. So Orlando City has to get something out of this. And the quote from, and I believe this was from the Orlando Sentinel originally, the Mainland had a breakdown on all this. Alex Leitao, who's the CEO of Orlando City, he said the team isn't set on recalling DK, but they feel like they have to get something out of this extension because Orlando City's not exactly lighting it up on the goal-scoring front right now, and they can't watch their best goal scorer in some ways play for free in the promotion playoffs for another team. They're going to try to get some cash out of it. Okay, I have no problem. Play hardball. I got no problem with it. Like, hey, MLS has been, kind of smacked around a few times in terms of these situations, and they've tried to do the right thing for players and teams so many times and given up money. Play hardball. You can recall him. Say you're going to recall him until that check comes.
Yeah,
like do what you got to do. That's the deal here. And yeah, when you scored 1 goal in 2 games, you can't really justify that to your fan base if you're going to let him be over there for free when you could bring him back for free. You got to make that justification. Cut the check.
And here's how it is right now in the championship. And this is how crazy it is with promotion playoffs coming and 2 matches left for most folks. Rotherham still is in the mother of all run-ins with their 6 matches in 20 days to get back to square. They've got 1 more to get back to it. 2 matches left for everybody else. Norwich and Watford, they're in. They just have to figure out who's going to be the championship, who's going to win the championship, because there's 5 points separating those 2. Norwich and Watford, they're in. Here's your promotion playoff spots right now, 3 through 6. Brentford has won 3 of their last 5. They're at 81 points, so 4 points ahead of Bournemouth, who's in 4th at 77, Swansea, who's in 5th at 77, behind on goal difference, Barnsley, who is 6th in the league right now, goal difference. And so you're looking at Bournemouth at a plus 30, don't think they're going to get touched of 2 matches. Swansea is at a plus 18, don't quite think you're going to make up 12 goals in 2. But Barnsley's really got to put the pedal down at a plus 10 right now and hope that there's some losses from Swansea ahead of them in 5th to try to get to that 5th slot. 6th looks like it's pretty secure for them, for Barnsley, but can they get to 5th? That's the push in the final 2 matches.
And they're probably going to have to pony up some cash to have a great striker to be able to do that. It's not going to be easy for them. One story to keep an eye on, ADO Den Haag in the Netherlands at the bottom of the Eredivisie table. I don't think it's a guarantee they get relegated yet, but it is very likely that they get relegated. They are in a situation where it had come out in the Telegraph that players and staff were notified that the club can't pay their salaries over the months of May and June. They don't have the money. They have financial issues. This has gone to court, and United Vanson, which is the ownership group out of China, they have been ordered to pay money into the club. They have not transferred the money. Their shares have been seized in the club now, and somebody else can come in and buy those shares for €2 million. That's what's owed by United Vanson, and the club's coffers, according to AD, are completely empty. No cash, no money. And they still got games to play. They got 4 games left in the Eredivisie. John's favorite outlet, the Daily Mail, is reporting that Lionel Messi is staying at Barcelona.
Okay.
That might have been Bartomeu trying to give you inside information on the phone, first off.
I think so, yes.
I agree with Fourcard. I don't believe the Daily Mail, but Fourcard is very optimistic. I think he stays. I think
so too.
The Daily Mail's throwing things out there to try to say things because that's what they do. The headline is Lionel Messi tells Barcelona he will stay at the club with his contract set to expire in 2 months. ... But tells President Joan Laporta he must, in all caps, splash out to make the side a dominant force. You got nothing to splash. So what does that look like? And they cite reports in Spain, which Spain has had reports he's coming, he's going, he's leaving. There's been reports that PSG made an offer. There's all kinds of reports about reports and other reports about those reports, and we're in the report wormhole. So I am skeptical that anything has been decided yet. I do think he ultimately stays.
Yeah, I went back and forth on it originally.
Well, it's changed.
But the more that it got to where things stand now, I thought that he was going to be staying at Barcelona. So, I was one of the converts who initially thought he was leaving, but now I think he's staying too. Yeah,
you've got a Telediarios de TVE in Spain saying, and this is translated, that Messi's father has been in Barcelona. They've met with the club, and Messi's father has told Joan Laporta that the intention is to stay. There's got to be a new contract done and all that sort of stuff. So, that's just where it stands. It's going to be one of the big dramas. Sergio Ramos' future is going to be a big drama going forward. Sergio Aguero, where does he end up? Maybe at Barcelona. David Alaba, it sounds like finally, maybe after it was reported in January, then it got weird. It sounds like he's going to do his deal with Real Madrid, and that will happen. Oh, boy. The silly season hasn't even gotten really silly yet, but that's where things will go. All right. Tomorrow, we will be back with our morning show at 9 o'clock. Possibly a later start, so stay tuned. There's lots of running around tomorrow because we have the morning show. We've got Mike Conti joining us in the morning. We have some other things Mike and I have to film and get ready for our countdown to kickoff, which will air on the Atlanta United YouTube channel later in the afternoon. We've got a show up in Kennesaw tomorrow evening with Lloyd Soccer, with American Football Provisions, with NASA Top Hat, with the Atlanta Panthers, with lots of folks coming up to hang out, which will be a lot of fun at Dry County Brewing Company. We hope you can be with us in person or virtually on the Twitch pitch, twitch.tv/soccer down here. You can watch there starting at 6 o'clock. We'll have the run-up at some point in a recorded fashion tomorrow because of the live show. So it's going to be a busy, busy day tomorrow to get ready for a busy weekend where you have Atlanta United, 7 o'clock on Friday evening. That game will be available on the CW. If you are in the Atlanta footprint, you can watch at atlutd.com/live. There are schedule conflicts with Bally Sports South, Bally Sports Southeast. So that game will be on the CW in Atlanta, CW69, and you can watch it on the club's website. I know it's a different situation because it gets bumped. Bally's can't have it on their app. It goes to the team website. You can't do that for every game. I wish you could. You can't. We'll be on 92.9 The Game. Or, sorry, we will not be. We'll be on Star 94.1 because we're getting moved over because the Hawks are playing on the same time, and the Braves are playing. That's why Atlanta United gets bumped. There's bumping everywhere on Saturday, basically. We'll be on Star 94.
This is NASCAR at Talladega weekend when it comes to programming.
TV contracts, radio contracts, all the contracts. We are on Star 94.1. You can still listen to it on the Odyssey app. You can still listen to it on the Atlanta United app. You can listen on your radio at 94.1 FM. We'll have all of our usual pregame and postgame coverage. The Salty Takeaway will be back Saturday evening at some point with John and Nick and Jarrett. Full-time report will be up on the Atlanta United section of the 92.9 The Game podcast on the Off the Woodwork section. So many different things going on. I can't even keep track of it. So I'm going to go eat lunch and try to get my schedule in order to get ready for the rest of the day and tomorrow and Saturday. And then I can sleep on Sunday as much as possible. Mm-hmm. Thanks to our guest today. Thanks to Niko Moreno, as always. Thanks to Jeff Greer of Louisville City. Great interviews. Love being able to add more folks into the mix for you guys. We'll keep trying to do that more and more to get some different voices from all over the country, all over the lower divisions, all of that stuff. We'll try to have all that for you as best as we can. Thanks to all of you who take your time to listen to us, engage, ask questions, be part of the conversation. We really appreciate y'all. We'll be back tomorrow. Mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata, y'all.